My name is Megan Nilsson, aka Crypto Megan, coming to you from Proof of Talk here at the Louvre. The energy is amazing, and we've got a very special guest today. Scott Shay, who's four-time bank founder, also authored 3 books, an incredibly rich history, and doing something revolutionary in the banking industry. So naturally, we had to hear from you. Scott, how are you doing today?
Great, Megan. There is great energy here, and it's great to be with you.
Thank you, thank you. So before we dig into this, tell us a little bit more about your background.
So I've started 4 banks, Bank United of Texas, which is now through acquisition part of JP Morgan Chase.
Wow.
And Merrick Bank, which is the largest private credit card bank in the United States that also I exited. And Signature Bank, extraordinarily proud of that. And I'm probably best known for being the creator of Signet, which was the first real 24/7 blockchain-enabled money tokenized deposit transfer system that was enormously successful. And then today I'm starting something that I think is actually the most revolutionary, actually not today, but my partners and I started a new full reserve bank that actually reverses the matrix. It's not like what we're hearing about with TradFi trying to bring crypto into the dark universe of, or the dark star.
The traditional rails.
Of traditional banking, but actually we're trying to bring banking into the more efficient crypto rails. And I think that if we will be successful, and it will revolutionize banking.
Wow, that's a great start and a huge, powerful statement there. And it's really refreshing to hear. It's a very different perspective. I guess where we'll start is where TradFi is now and where banking's at now. What do you see the issues with, like with the JP Morgan, for example, and the way that they're approaching the industry?
So I think they're approaching the industry in a way that, honestly, I don't think most of the crypto industry gets. And the irony to me is that JP Morgan has used the exact same playbook previously with middle market banks. I mean, let's not forget, before the repeal of Glass-Steagall in 1999, the top 6 banks had about 10-12% market share. Then, by the great financial crisis, they had 35% market share. Today, they had 60% market share. They have it right now as we're sitting in the United States. So what they've done successfully is to embrace the middle market banks and extinguish them. And what I think and if you go to more conferences than me, I'm sure of that. And you get, this huge JP Morgan signs everywhere, and we're singing Kumbaya.
The biggest booth in Consensus, actually. So they're definitely wanting to enter this world.
Well, they want to enter the world, but they think that they should own this world. They think it's their birthright. And they think that all of these pesky crypto companies, they will embrace them and ultimately supersede them and extinguish them.
So you're saying that people's fears who are already in the crypto industry are actually probably true about what the banks are trying to construct within the industry, or what is the dynamic there?
It's a little bit about how the crypto industry has been abused, in that people get a JP Morgan account and they are giddy. They think it's the best day in their life. But if you end up having to comport yourself to the crypto system that they're creating, ultimately, you're not going to be all that successful, because they have a view. And, again, you've talked, I'm sure, folks there, is they want to pull, and their gravitational pull is very great. They want to pull people into their curated cul-de-sacs. And then once they've done that, they've really converted these crypto companies into TradFi subsidiaries.
The opposite of what you've set out to achieve.
Yeah, and I think that the whole reason why my crypto journey started in 2013.
Wow, you've definitely been around since the beginning then.
Well, I became a blockchain maximalist. I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, I'm a blockchain maximalist. And I realized, being more than a bit of a bank nerd, that we were still working with 1970s, no joke, 1980s systems. And here was a blockchain that could do something revolutionary, immutable, not quite instantaneous, but pretty close to it in those days. And it could provide so much more clarity and simplicity than the layer upon layer of complicated bank
and efficiency
machinery. Yes. And so it could take huge amounts of costs out of the banking system.
Right.
So I recognized that, and I thought, we've got to bring this to banking. Now, the pushback was even then enormous. If you try to bring the blockchain onto a banking system, onto Fidelity or FIS, Fiserv, Jack Henry, it is like stapling paper to cardboard. That's what I used to call it. It's like...
That's an interesting analogy.
It works, but it's really, really fragile. It's subject to getting torn.
Right.
Or something going wrong. And because the systems fundamentally don't talk to each other. So I'm going to go even one step deeper. That's because the banking system is fundamentally unlike crypto. In crypto, at an atomic and a subatomic level, in crypto, you move a whole piece of a Bitcoin. It doesn't have to be a whole Bitcoin. You move a whole part of Ethereum.
Right.
You move a whole part of Solana. In banking, you don't do any of that. You move a debit or credit. So when you tokenize a deposit at a fractional bank, they don't have that money. They are making a promise to pay.
Right.
So at the most subatomic level, it doesn't work. And you can't actually immutably move a dollar. So that's why stablecoin arose, right? Because there you could move a block of a receipt of $1. Right. But it's still outside of the banking system. So what we're doing, which is revolutionary, and I'm so, I have three great partners, Jeff Wallace, Aurel Bunnell, Kyle O'Donnell, and we have the same vision, is we have a full reserve bank. So all the money, unlike every other bank in the world, we don't lend a penny. We don't take any interest rate risk, any credit risk.
A full reserve versus a fractional reserve, which is what we've all heard about in the crypto industry, which was what the banks do, which is what they don't want us to do here, or exchanges anyway. That's been the issue. They don't want them to run like banks, right?
Right. And by the way, even Satoshi, in the original white paper, or one of the original white papers, is getting at the same issue, is that he wanted to move a block of something, an ethereal commodity, but it was a whole block. And then once it came to me, it was owned by me.
Right.
A fractional reserve deposit isn't that. It's a promise to the bank to pay. In the U.S., there's a guarantee up to $250,000.
Right.
But it's still, that's a promise by the government to pay. It's not
another
actually
promise
moving.
Upon a promise. Yeah.
Right. So we did, by keeping all the money in a custody environment, when you move $1 on our blockchain, either private inside the bank, or we have a version that's on the Ethereum system, so it's public to everybody, you actually move $1. It's like I'm handing you $1, I'm handing him $1, and you keep handing the dollar. It's not a receipt for $1, like a stablecoin. It's not an IOU like a tokenized deposit.
Right.
It is an actual dollar in a U.S. bank that has immediate settlement and clearing because it's onshore. And that may sound a little nerdy, but it's actually really getting to at least one of the things that Satoshi wanted. We can't be anonymous because we're a U.S. We're a U.S. bank, so we have to have KYC and AML.
Yes.
But you actually get to move $1 and you get to move it on the chain. And if we can do that in the future, our vision of banking is that people who want to lend money will go on the system and lend money from their dollars.
Right.
And people will know I'm getting paid a yield because I'm investing in this kind of loan or I'm investing in that kind of loan, as opposed to you putting the money in the bank, thinking it's there, but you're actually a lender to this building, to restaurant, to who knows what. It's like you invested in a hedge fund, except it does have some insurance.
Right. Wow. I mean, when you put it like that, it's a really crazy system that we've been operating off of for so long. And what you're describing is much closer to the vision of where we're supposed to be headed, in my opinion, than where we are at right now. And I think it's a vision that maybe it's going to take people a lot of time to catch up with, but eventually they'll get there. It makes sense, and it is truly revolutionary. What do you think will be the biggest pushback from the banks toward this vision?
So some of the banks think, and JP Morgan, I think, believes this, that there's a missing verse in the Bible. That in the first chapter it should have said, and the world was given to JP Morgan. And so they fully will use, and look at what's going on, what happened, the Genius Act and the Clarity Act is currently being debated in Washington. The banks think that they should own the terrain.
They do.
And they believe it firmly. They believe it sincerely. And they're going to use their entire weight to push back. And look, I can't tell you they won't be successful because they have a lot of weight. But if we're successful, we will make banking sort of for the people, by the people, at least for businesses. We're a B2B bank, but we'll really hope that will, I think, fundamentally put the United States and anybody who adopts full reserve banking on a much more safe and secure path. And you'll know, you put your money in the bank and it's there. It didn't just get lended out and it's part of a
much more transparency.
Confidence, much more transparency.
Absolutely. This is a very big idea, and I'm glad we got to sit down. We definitely need a part 2 of this to get more in depth. But, you know, we are all behind you in this mission, and it's been really amazing to catch up. Where can people find your books?
N3XT is the name of is our website, n3xt.io. And you can find us on Twitter, X, at N3XTINC.
Perfect. Scott, thank you so much for being here today. This is powered by AIBC, a massive event coming in Rome. We'd love to invite you to speak as well.
A pleasure.
And thank you. We're looking forward to catching up with you again soon. We wish you luck in your endeavor, although you don't need any, being a 4-time bank founder.
You know what? Napoleon said, we're in France. He always said he wanted his generals lucky. So I'm happy to take that.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being here, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you. A pleasure.